get money to spend, trying a bunch of different things. I had a lot of success with the product display ads, but not so much with sponsored ads. I took a course by Elena Johnson and Bonnie Paulson in 2018. And it's a fantastic course. I highly recommend it, just like I highly recommend Michael's book. And from them, I learned kind of a different way to look at Amazon ads. And it was less about, you know, CPC and more about CTR and looking at your conversions and being more focused with your keywords. Right. And I got to the point where I'm even more focused with keywords and targeting than most people. So from there, a lot of things changed with how I ran Amazon ads, and so I was having a lot more success. And then, you know, over time, things changed, and things always change. And what I was seeing was a lot of people were hitting a wall and floundering at that point. And sometimes I hit walls, and I'm like banging my head against it. But I think the reason why I do what I do is because I don't give up. I'm stubborn. And so I will dig deeper. I will try weird things, and I will keep going at it until I break through that wall. And this year, a lot of people have struggled with Amazon ads. And so they want, you know, to know more. And I've had a lot of different clients over the years. And I currently have some great clients other than John. And so for my point of view, there's never anything not to learn, and you can pretty much learn from anyone. And so I'm part of groups that we, you know, trade data and discuss. There's one that I particularly like that's about analyzing your, optimizing your AMS keywords. That's a great group. And it's one of those things where I think that as long as you keep trying and learning, the sky's the limit. And I spend a lot of time on Facebook writing 5,000 word posts and comments. And it got to the point where I mean, those take me quite a few hours to compose because I want to be clear. Yeah. And more people want to know more and more. And so I kind of changed my focus from just focusing on clients to focusing on teaching. Yeah,
exactly. And by the way, I can attest to your stubbornness. There's no doubt that you do have that. I am a little concerned that you have other customers than me, but you know, we can talk about that later. Anyhow, I also noticed that I started recording this late. So just a real quick recap for folks. Felicia and I met at a Austin Summit group. We've been talking together. I do ReaderLinks stuff. She does ad stuff. And so it seemed like a great combination. That is Felicia Beasley. I'm John Logston. Sorry I didn't record this sooner. And before, just so you guys know, at the end of this, we're also going to be telling you a little bit of a secret, I guess, or something like that. We have info at the end of this thing, so hang around for that. Okay, great. Well, it's a lot of information that, you know, we're going to have to share, so we really want to kind of get to it. Again, if you have any questions, please open up your, hover over your Zoom screen and look at the very bottom, and there should be a button that says Q&A. If you click on the Q&A, you should be able to ask questions in there. Alex, I think you're here. Alex, if you wouldn't mind just asking one question there so I can make sure that that works, I would appreciate it. Alex, by the way, is basically our unhired customer service guy. He's great. He always helps people on there, and I'm always saying you're hired, even though we don't pay him. So yeah, he's definitely a pro at ReaderLinks. Anyway, if you could ask a question, I'd appreciate it. Other than that, let's go ahead and start talking about what we've done and so on. So if you want to go ahead and do a share, then I would appreciate that. Orlando just typed in a question and it worked. So there we go. All right, so this is the front page of ReaderLinks, and this is currently showing my data for today. And it looks like actually, I need to grab the latest data, because if you'll notice right there, it says 12:54 p.m. And that's because I rebooted my machine before I started this, because I wanted to make sure that my machine was happy. So give me just 1 second. I'm collecting the data, and boom. Okay, if you click home again, then that should give us an update. Hopefully it's a little better. Yay, $1. Sweet. All right, so that was worth it. Okay, now what we're going to talk about really quick here is just, this is your home screen. Most of you have seen this, a few of you may not have. So basically this is going to give you a breakdown of your daily data. We have a bookmarklet that pretty much runs and grabs your KDP data for you all the time, and then throws that into the screen. And so from here, you know, you have your standard stuff where you have the drop down for today, 30 days, this month, and so on. If you scroll down just a smidge, you can see that the little table at the bottom here, it shows today, yesterday, month to date, and then a gray line that says estimated this month. So that way you just kind of get an idea of, you know, how you're tracking, you know, for that particular month. And then of course you have graphs underneath that and all that. So, but we're not going to focus too much on all of ReaderLinks. We're going to, there are a lot of things that ReaderLinks offers, but if you notice, she's just hovered over the top there where it says reports. And that's what we're really going to be focusing in today with Felicia. So go ahead and click that. And so the first thing we're going to see here is, you know, there are two tabs. We have the series sell-through read-through, and we also have the series ads analysis. And what we need to do here is, you have to actually choose a series in order to see any of these things. So we're going to choose my Las Vegas Paranormal Police Department. It's been having some struggles. It's an older series, so it's been having a little bit of struggles. And, you know, as we joke, we spend so much time working on other stuff that we don't spend as much time focusing on actually promoting our own books. But that's why, you know, we have been doing this, and that's so we can start gauging things and how things work. And at the top of this page, you can set a time frame for how you want to study this data. So right now we're at 30 days, but you have all of these different ones that you can choose, and it will automatically update you know, that data for you just by changing the date. So if we go back to the 30 days, let's go ahead and discuss this. So the first thing is we're going to see all these books are listed, and then you're going to see each one of them has a price. That's just a numeric value that you're entering in, so you can use it for reference. And we're going to see the sales, the sell-through, the pages, the KENPC rate, and that's basically what KENP is saying. Here's how many actual normalized pages there are, the normalized page count there are for this particular book, and then full reads, which we'll talk about shortly. And then of course you can have, you know, each book goes through a sell-through process, and then you can see a cumulative sell-through based on the first book to the book that you're looking at. And the same thing goes with read-through. So I want to go ahead and shut up now. I'm just trying to give them like quick dump information, and then from there you can kind of dig a little deeper. That's kind of the goal. So looking at this, the sell-through information, if we could just start there, tell me why this is important, and you know, just kind of break it down a little bit.
Okay, so there are two things to look at. One is the book-to-book sell-through, which is the first column here. And the other is the cumulative sell-through, which is this column here. And as John said, cumulative is basically each book compared to book one. Now, what's important with the cumulative sell-through, and this is what we use as the calculation for your future estimated revenue, which we'll get to in a little bit. This tells you how many people bought your entire series. In this case, it was 12.5. So basically, for every, you know, 100 people who bought book one, 12 and a half of them bought the last book in the series. But because this is over a specific point in time, in this case 30 days, and different time periods are going to give you different data. Anything lower than 30 days or shorter than 30 days is going to be a lot more skewed, especially if you have a long series, because people aren't going to read it that fast. So this is 30 days, and you can play around with your time periods. I particularly like lifetime, which is actually in ReaderLinks is all data. So if you don't have all your data from day one, it's only going to give you what you have in ReaderLinks. But you can go back 90 days in KDP for ReaderLinks.
And just if I can interrupt, just so you know, when you upload your 90 days, that will allow you to put in all your books and stuff. But then when you're running the bookmarklet that grabs the data automatically, there's a little line there that says start importing historic data, and it will grab all the way back for you. Doesn't do it on a daily basis because Amazon doesn't, I'm sorry, yeah, KDP doesn't offer that. So it will only grab the monthly snapshots at that point, but it still will allow you to get all the data that you need going back.
Oh, okay. That said, so with this, people are not necessarily reading within that 30-day period. So think of it this way. Let's say, because you can see that there are more people bought book 8 than bought book 7 in 30 days, and that's not actually possible. And even more people bought book 4. So what this is actually saying is within 30 days, this is how many people bought this book. But it's not telling you how many of the people who bought book 1 this month also bought book 8 this month. You can do lifetime to find kind of how your sell-through has been historically, but that number is also going to be skewed, and it's not something we would use for a calculation, simply because the release times are different. Anytime you've had a promotion, the things that'll really skew your data here is new releases and book 1 promos. So those are always things you should kind of keep in mind. This is kind of a trick that I did yesterday. A client had a new release and it was skewing her numbers to make it look like she made like $50 per sale of book 1. And so what I did is I took that new release out of the series that you can do for on ReaderLinks in your books tab, and just kind of put it non-categorized and then looked at it on just a basis of book 1 through 3. And that gave me a little bit more accurate of a number. You can kind of do the same. Well, with promos, what I would suggest is just going further back and then just realizing that it's going to be a little bit lower of a read through and a sell through, especially a sell through if you're doing a 99-cent or a free promo. So
when you say going further back, you mean back like don't just do 30 days, do like 60 or 90 days. Is that what you mean? Okay.
Yes. You can also do, it does give you the option to do specific dates. So you can just do right before the promo and figure out what everything was then. So for what we would use sell through, and this goes for read through too, is finding out what the stopping points are for people. In this case, the numbers are really weird, and that's because it's a bit longer of a series. And 30 days is really not a good snapshot, just because it's such a long series. Now, if you had 2 books in a series or 3, a 30-day snapshot would be fine. Now, some of the things you can look here, especially for book 1 and 2, you kind of have to think, so why is it 20%? That seems kind of low. And that 20% does affect the cumulative sell-through, which does affect your future revenue. And one of the things it can be is your price of book 1. If your book is free or 99 cents, it is likely going to lower your sell-through, especially if you're doing advertising or if it's a promotion. And that's because a lot of people that pick up the book won't read it right away or ever, or they're the wrong kind of reader for you and they just picked it up because it was cheap or free. What the price of book 2 is also has an effect, especially if your book is free or 99 cents. The difference between a 99-cent book and a $4.99 book is a pretty big jump, and people have to be pretty invested in book 1. Another thing to consider if you're in Kindle Unlimited is someone might buy book 1 free or buy it at 99 cents, but they're a Kindle Unlimited user, so they just go on and start reading from book 2 on instead of paying the price. And that's not something you can actually know. It's just, it is what it is, and we just have to consider that, but there's no way to actually use concrete data to put it into our calculations. In this case, a jump from 99 cents to $2.99 is a lot less steep. Now, book 2 here, Grave Creatures, was $4.99 up until May 1st, or April 29th actually, but we'll just look at May. And we had issues with sell-through. and we wanted to raise sell-through. And we had two options. We could increase the price of the merging book 1 to $2.99 and keep book 2 $4.99, or we could decrease book 2 to $2.99 and keep book 1 at 99 cents. The merging does very well with ads at 99 cents, and it's a long series. The more people we can, seed into the series, the better. But if they're not going on to book 2, it doesn't matter. So the first thing we were trying is decreasing book 2 to $2.99 for 30 days. And it's what, the 21st? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we're getting up to that point. And for the next tab that we talk about soon, the series ads analysis, I'm going to focus on figuring out whether or not dropping the price of book 2 had a positive or negative effect, and whether or not we should keep it this way going forward, or if we should look at book 1. Knowing what to price your books at is a common question, and this is a good way to track what price changes affect your sell-through and read-through.
Real quick, and is that, just want to ask a question there, is that true not just for your books, but for each series that you run, right? So I mean, for like this series, maybe it's 99 cents is the best. We don't know yet. We're trying to figure that out. But maybe for like, my Ononican series, maybe the best is $2.99 to start with. Is that true, or is it?
Yes, it'll be a series by series basis. I consider series kind of on their own, because even same genre, even same world sometimes, but same world, same genre tends to be a little bit closer in audience. You're not going to have the same audiences. You'll have some crossover, but not necessarily everyone will read the same. Also,
especially because you might have this, like this one is male lead, and like Netherworld, for example, is female lead. So you could have problems there too, right?
Right. Okay. And that's something to consider with your ads too, is looking at things at a series level rather than as a genre level. And Ononican is fantasy, so that would be completely different than your urban fantasy.
Okay, so we're now at sell-through, and we're kind of looking at that. And so I think we kind of have a general idea of what's going on with that. Just going from book 1 to book 2 and so on, and then seeing your cumulative over time to see how this book is performing. So if anybody does have any questions on sell-through, again, click on the Q&A tab or button at the bottom of your Zoom window, and you can ask the question in there, and we'll address it later. But let's go ahead and talk now about the pages side, and explain to me, like, for example, the full reads, so people understand how that's calculated.
Okay, so full reads is calculated by taking your pages and dividing it by your KE and PC to find out how many actual full reads of your book happened in that time period. And we use that to calculate read-through because different books have different KE and PC. So if we compared the pages and divided the pages by each other, so book 2's pages by book 1's pages, it would be very inaccurate when it comes to read-through because the KE and PC between the two books is very different.
It should be noted, I'm sorry, it should be noted that does not represent, full reads does not represent that every person who picked up the book actually read the book all the way through. What it represents is, let's say, I don't know, let's say 100 people picked up your book. And of that 100 people, you might have, let's say, 50 who actually read it all the way through. The other people have gotten certain distances into the book. Maybe they stopped, maybe they just have, are still reading it. It's taken time. But the cumulative amount of pages is what's reported to us on that pages column. And so we divide that by the 237, and that's telling us, if you were to look at it as the full book being read, it doesn't necessarily mean that 110 people read your book. It could actually be, a lot more than that, like 150, sorry, I guess makes more sense. 150 people have gotten your book, and of that, a portion of them have fully read it, and a portion of them have made up the difference between that number to 110. So it's not really, there's no way for us to know who has actually read your book all the way through. We don't know that information. It's not possible to get that.
It's keeping that in consideration because that does affect your read-through number for book 1 to book 2. Typically, if someone reads book 2, they'll go into book 3 and book 4. I don't really like to use read through to figure out if a book has an issue with a book to book. I prefer sell through for that, but you can look at both. But keep in mind that because of the fact that full reads is not each person who read the book fully, it is just your cumulative, this number is going to be higher than reality. Because more likely than not, more than 110 people borrowed your book and read part of it, but only 64.66 full reads of book 2. So this number is going to be higher than in actuality. But that only matters from if you're analyzing your series as books. It does not affect ads. And that's because when you're running an ad, it doesn't matter if people are borrowing your book. It only matters what is being read, because page reads is what pays you, not borrows. And so when we do calculations and see if ads are profitable or not, we care about full reads. We don't care about borrows. It's very hard to track actual borrows. You can look at your rank for kind of an idea on whether or not you're getting borrows, but because rank is not static and it's fluid based on other people in the store, I don't really even look at borrows when it comes to analyzing ads, which is why there's no information on that here. Okay. But otherwise, read through and sell through are pretty much the same.
Okay. And now if you scroll down a little bit further, it's going to say right here, based on the information above, here is your estimated future revenue per reported sale on ReaderLinks. So can you kind of give us an idea of what that table means? I mean, that's obviously that's pretty pathetic. That over 8 books, my estimated total revenue is $4.57. Now that's over a 30-day period, but can you give us an idea of what those represent, please?
Yes, I can do that. So estimated sales revenue is just calculating your sell-through. And this is calculated by basically looking at how much money you make per book, which is your book's price by your royalty rate. So whatever you're actually getting paid minus your delivery fee. So that's the first part of that calculation. And then the second part of the calculation considers your cumulative sell-through. And so, for example, I'm not going to do the math in my head. So I sell book 1, you get 35 cents. It's just, you get 35 cents. And if it was a $2.99 book, you'd probably get about $2. Well, for book 2, you're going to get about $2. But when we're calculating your estimated future revenue, we only want to consider the sell-through of the amount of people that actually go on to book 2. And in this case, it's 20%. So in reality, when you sell a book 1, you're not making $2. You're making 20% of $2. And we do that calculation for every book in the series and then add it together. And so if John sells a book 1 in 30 days, he can estimate about $2.90 for each of those books sold. And of course, he only makes 35 cents for a book 1. So why is it such a large number in comparison? And why is that important? Well, when you're running ads, especially for Amazon ads or even Facebook ads, you can't really judge whether or not you're profitable by your sales of whatever book you're advertising, especially when it just comes to sales, because you're ignoring page reads of that book and you're ignoring any sell-through or read-through. And it's hard to know whether or not to turn off ads or continue them without knowing what you might be making. Now, it might feel weird to go by an estimated future revenue, but keep in mind that this estimated future revenue is based on your past data. So it is a pretty close estimate, and it's a conservative one. And I'll go into what we do to make it more of a conservative revenue rather than, giving you X, like how much you would make based on just the data as a whole. And in this case, sorry, I lost my train of thought. So for the $2.90, Of course, this is over a 30-day period. And this is important because a lot of people go, well, we know our sell-through is going to be different depending on our period of time. So, you know, why this number? Well, the reason I look at the 30 days rather than any other time period when I'm doing this ad calculation, not when I'm looking at sell-through as a whole, but when I'm doing an ad calculation, is because I want to know how much I'm making that month. And like we said before, people who buy book 1 probably aren't going to buy book 8 this month. So I don't want to consider them as part of the sell-through if I'm not getting that money this month. So that's why I do the 30 days.
Okay, and then when we move into the estimated reads, it's pretty much the same idea. We're already at 30 minutes in, so I know we have another tab to work on. So we're probably going to have to do some little more Reader's Digest on this, because I think the other tab is going to, you know, also really have some work. But again, if you have any questions, click the Q&A thing at the bottom and ask it in there. But the estimated reads revenue is pretty much the same idea as sales. Yes. And it is conservative, right?
The thing we do with estimated reads, and I should probably explain this a little bit better. Your estimated reads is not the same as sales, actually. This is what's confusing about this, so I should probably go into it. Your estimated reads is based on your full reads, so this number, as a percentage of your sales. Because for a lot of people, they're getting 2-3 times as many full reads as a sale. And we really want a good, more, or a better accurate number. So if we did 1 for 1, this number could be too low. Now in this case, you actually sold more books than had full reads. So if we did 1 for 1, it'd be even worse. This number would be too high. So we do consider the percentage between the two when we calculate this estimated reads revenue. So if you try to do this yourself and you forget to do that step, which I've done in the past, this number won't be accurate. Now we have tested this over and over and over and over and over again with ReaderLinks, and the data is, is coming back accurately when I do the manual calculations. Now the estimated part, or the conservative estimated part, is we divide this by 2. So this is not actually your max estimated. It's, if you're getting a lot of page reads and we're dividing that by 2, it's going to be a lot lower of a estimate, which is good because you don't want to lose money on sales.
Right, so the idea there is that if it's lower, you're going to bid accordingly as opposed to bidding optimistically and then find out either you're breaking even or actually losing money based on this estimate. So we're basically saying, try to hit this low target and you should still be profitable is the idea. And it should be noted that we are using a 0.004. We're not doing an averaged over time on this because it's a conservative rate that KEMP has. It has dipped under 0.004 before, but it's pretty rare. And so that's where we're at. So even that number before we divide it by 2 is kind of low compared to what, you know, the average is.
Yep. And then total revenue is easy. It's just these 2 numbers added together.
Right.
And when we say per reported sale, a lot of people like to look, have I made profit today based on my ad spend today? And sometimes your revenue is not going to be more than your expenses for that day. And so this number really helps you look at, well, no, I know I spent $5 more than I made that day, but how much am I going to be making in the future based on that extra money I spent? And so that's why this figure really helps. And you can do this per ad, and you can do this as just your KDP sales, because sometimes you can't get an accurate report of actual sales from ads.
Great. Okay, so now when we're moving into the ACoS section, we're showing a 461%. Now this value that's listed there is basically saying, I'm guessing here, but basically saying that whatever ad that we're running for the first book in this series, as long as that is coming back at a 461 or lower, we're good. For that's individual ad, right? Or is that inaccurate?
No, that's accurate. It's basically based on your estimated total revenue And so this is basically saying if you're under 461%, you're under your estimated total revenue. So you're should, based on the estimate, be making more money or be a profit over a loss. And this looks, the reason we even have this is because it's a lot easier just to look at your dashboard and go, okay, my ACoS is this and this, 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 and this, rather than having to do the calculation. Oh, I spent this amount, because let's say you have 5 sales and you spent $17 and your estimated total revenue is $4.57. To find out whether or not your ACoS is profitable, you would have to divide your spend by how many sales you got to find out how much it costs per that sale, and then compare it to your total revenue. And that's what I've been doing in the past. And when you have over 100 ads between a lot of people, that can take a lot of time. Now I just can write this number down, scroll down through the dashboard and be like, oh, that ad has an issue. That ad is good. That ad has an issue. That ad is good. Keep in mind your ACoS is based on sales, and it's not taking into effect borrows that turned into reads. And so it does have a limited value when it comes to that. So if you have no sales, you're not going to have an ACoS. I would just ignore that and go based on your estimated reads revenue when comparing whether or not an ad is profitable. And that's kind of going into the weeds. So that's all I'll say about that.
Okay, so Alex is asking how the ACoS is calculated in RL. I can look that up to find specifics.
I can tell you.
Okay.
So for your ACoS, what Amazon considers 100% is your sale price, not your royalty rate. So how this number is calculated is by taking your sale price, in this case 99 cents, and dividing it, or well, actually taking your estimated total revenue, which is 457, and dividing it by your sale price, which is 99 cents. And that gives you 461%. The reason this is so high, because if this book was $2.99, the same estimated total revenue, this would be a lot lower of a number. And it's because it's a 99-cent book, which is, you know, with 99-cent books, you will probably have a higher ACoS. If your book is free, your ACoS will either be 0, even if you have free downloads, or if you had one sale and then you made it free, your ACoS can be like 5,000. I've had that happen, which is fine.
And I just want to point out real quick, this is not a combination of all of your ads for a particular thing. So if you're looking at that and you're looking at the number at the top, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about on the AMS dashboard, when you actually look at the ads and in the list at the bottom, it sits there and shows the information about your ACoS on that actual line by line chart. That's the number that we're doing the comparison for, right?
Yes and no.
Okay.
When I'm doing actual looking at the ads to see what needs to be adjusted and what doesn't, or what needs to be turned off, I do look at an ad to ad basis. If I'm looking at our overall for the month and I'm seeing that overall the ads are, let's say your ACoS is at 700%, I know that I need to look deeper into that series because you are losing money or likely losing money that month. And so it's one of those shortcuts. If you're like 200% ACoS, I can be like, oh, well, I'll move on to a different series right now.
Gotcha. So when you're looking at the summary, it's still applicable to that, because if it's 700% and this is 461, then obviously math, right? We can go, okay, something's wrong. And then you can jump in there and now you can look the line by line and go, oh, this one's like, 1,200%. That's bad. I'm going to drop that one, but this one's doing, much better, and so on. You can kind of gauge them individually. Is that what you're doing?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, so let's move down then to the estimated profitable bid calculator real quick and kind of run through what is that for? What am I going to use that for?
Okay, so these are not, you wouldn't use these together. You can use them at the same time, but you wouldn't really use them together. They're used for two different things. So let's just look at the clicks per sale. So for clicks per sale, we're looking at your conversion rate, basically, your sales conversion rate. If you don't know, you can put any number in here that you think it might be. I would aim high if you really don't know. I actually do calculate sales conversion rates per series, and I put that number in here. I can't remember off the top of my head what John's is for this series, but I think it's 20. Nope. And that's because it's a 99-cent book. So what it's telling me is, in order to stay within this estimated total revenue with 20 clicks, my profitable bid is 23 cents, which is pretty low. So what I would do is, when I'm making a new ad, or if I'm adjusting the price of the bids that an ad has, this is a good starting point. It really does depend on how you run Amazon ads, but what I do is I start higher than what it might end up being, and then I raise it based on scaling, or I lower the price if I want to keep things stable but lower my costs. So in this case, I would start at 23 cents, and that's what kind of this calculator is for, is figuring out, okay, where should I be starting? Because one of the biggest things that people ask is what I should be bidding. And it's literally well, that depends on your series. And so this gives you a good idea of a starting point. As your conversion rates change, and sometimes those conversion rates will change per ad, you can adjust your clicks per sale to see what your profitable bid would be for that ad. Now, if you don't know your conversions, but you want to know, what your bid, what your conversions need to be based on your bid, you can adjust your cost per click. And in this case, let's say you put a bid of 40 cents. Well, now we know that we need to have one reported sale in every 11 clicks in order to stay within our profitable revenue. I don't use this for this. I use this to put my ACPC, your average cost per click, for an ad. So let's say I have an ad that the ACPC is 38. It's not my bid. My bid would be, let's say, 50 cents, but my ACPC is 38 cents. Now I know that that particular ad should have a reported sales of at least 1 in 12. And if it has more clicks than 12 and no sales, then I probably need to look into it more.
Gotcha. Okay, great. All right. So again, this is the read-through stuff. We're already at an hour and 45 minutes, or I'm sorry, 45 minutes in, and we still have to get to the other thing. So hopefully you guys can hang a little longer. We are recording this thing, but there's still a lot to talk about here. So again, any questions, Q&A thing, and click the button. All right. So let's go ahead and move on to the next thing, and that's going to be the series ads analysis. Real quick on this, I should note that the profit trend and rate of change graphs at the very top there come by way of Joe Solari. He and I were talking about this. He says, boy, I sure would like to see this in visual form, which obviously made sense on the profit trend, but he also recommended the rate of change calculation, which is essentially based on the profit field. And what we're doing there is dividing the two dates of a profit field minus 1 times 100. And the goal there is to kind of actually see on a day-to-day basis, what is your actual change, how far is stuff jumping back and forth based on the things that you do. So you can study that information up there. Also, it should be noted that this particular page or tab is not impacted at all by the time frame drop down at the top. So this is only 30 days. It does not, like if you change that there, the stuff down at the bottom does not change. And that's because this is just a 30-day trend. This is a pretty big chart. And, Felicia said, hey, you only need to go back 30 days on this stuff. And each date is a 7-day rolling average. So if you scroll down a little further, you'll see that there's a source chart at the bottom. And this is actually the source data that is used to build the top information. So what is the top one at the very top, the date?
The 21st.
So the 21st. So if you scroll back down to the source data, basically what you're doing is you're taking from the 15th to the 21st, averaging, adding and averaging all of those fields together. And then for the 22nd, it would be the 16th through the 22nd. For the 23rd, the 17th through the 23rd, and so on and so forth. So that's how it's calculating this data. Why are we doing a 7-day average on that?
So I think I can say this. Originally, John asked me what day frame to go, and I kind of bounced around between 7 and 14 days. So I said, hey, let's do 10. And then while I was writing the help page, trying to give examples, I realized 10 is too much when it comes to this. And that's because we want to track actual changes and see how our progress is going. And if we're doing an average of 10 days, you're going to want to wait at least 11 days before you start to see an actual accurate, this is what actually changed between this date and when you made the change. You can see the gradual changes, but it's not going to be represented by a good average. But 7 days, that knocks it down 3 days, and that lets you look at it on a week-to-week basis, which is actually how I was doing this before. And then I would do the lazy thing where I would just average it out week by week instead of doing it day by day, because this takes time. You have to put your data in every day. You have to, look at it and analyze it from that. And you have to actually have a spreadsheet that works. And sometimes it doesn't. I think what I should answer first, though, is what is important? Why would we even care about the average versus our day-to-day? And that's because day-to-day fluctuates a lot. And look at this. This day's 466, 360, 733, 671, 826, yay! And then it goes down to 3, then 6, then 5, then 3, then 9. And this is telling us really that, things change every day. And if you're someone who has different trends during a week where you sell a lot of books on Tuesday through Friday and then sell nothing on the weekend, that'll really skew your data. And so you're like, I don't actually know if the change was helpful or not. So that's why we do the rolling average, because then you can actually see the trends and you can pick out, well, that's an issue. Do you want me to continue?
Gotcha. No, I gotcha. No, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. So, all right. So let's just talk then, what is just the general purpose of this tab?
This is a troubleshooting for the most part. You can use it for 2 things. The first thing I use it for is so is everything going well or is everything not going well? And in that way, you can look at, I like to look at profit first, because then I know if profit is trending up or profit is trending down. And this looks like it was trending up, but then now it's starting to trend down again. So I need to look into it. If it was just trending up or if it was staying steady, that would be great. You can look at your ROI, but be very careful with ROI, because this will be highly impacted by your actual ad spend, which is right here. Ad spend is right here. If you're not spending a lot on ads, your ROI is going to be a lot higher. As you notice, even though it's starting to trend down, the ROI is still, decent. So I don't even really look at ROI unless things are pretty much steady when it comes to ad spend. If your ad spend is pretty steady, your ROI is a lot more accurate. The next thing I look for troubleshooting at this point is if revenue is trending, if profit is trending down, I try to say, okay, why? And the first thing I look at actually is ad spend. Now, if your ad spend is decreasing and your profit is decreasing, then it's probably not a problem with your ads. It's a problem with the fact that your ads aren't spending. Then you can look at your revenue. Okay, so trending a little, it looks like, and that's because ad spend drops series-wide revenue. And as we talked about with the sell-through and read-through tab, this is over a 30-day period of time. and people who read book one aren't necessarily reading the entire series. And so that's why we have this number here, which is your book one revenue. We couldn't put the whole book one data on this page without, giving John a heart attack. So we have it separated out, and you can go to specific books. So if you push this, it'll bring you to the merging, which is the first book. And then you have to go to your ads analysis. And then it'll bring up this tab. And look at all that red. This is a 99-cent book. So if I was basing my decisions on this, I'd be like, oh, John, we have to turn off all your ads right now or you're going to die. And you're going to have to get a job at McDonald's. And so that's why we don't really consider it on its own. So I'll go back to the series. I didn't realize I had to do that again. All right, so back in the series. We're looking at the fact that the series revenue is dropping. So I'm going to look at that and look at what was going on with book one. Now, if you see, book one has actually been pretty steady when it comes to revenue, even as your ad spend has dropped. Now, this is telling you there was an issue with your ads, because if you're dropping just a little, but your revenue is not really dropping all that much, that might be an issue. And so this is all those, you can look at this, I mean, you could technically look at this daily, but I don't think you really need to, because it's not going to be a huge difference in change. But you can look at this in, a couple of minutes and see whether or not things are going well or whether or not you need to troubleshoot. And then this is pretty much used to troubleshoot. So for troubleshooting, actually there is another way, sorry. I'm going to do troubleshooting first, and then I'll go on to the next way you can use this. And I'll try to make it fast. So for troubleshooting, you want to ask yourself a question. And in this case, I want to ask, why is my profit trending down? And of course, the secondary question to ask is, how do I change that? But that is not what we're going to go into. So if I look back, it looks like, okay, it was trending up, trending up, trending up, trending up, down. And as you can see, your ad spend dropped. Now, the nice thing about looking at your ad spend here, well, actually, the problem with just looking at your ad spend here is it doesn't tell you where that ad spend is coming from. And in this case, because ReaderLinks really only tracks AMS and Facebook as reports, you can also put in like book hub ads and stuff manually, but this won't calculate anything with that. We can go over here and look at the actual spend of the individual platforms. And if you look up here, AMS was spending great, not bad, not bad. What? And you can see AMS stopped really spending and is spending a lot less than it was when profit was higher. So let's look at Facebook. Facebook is a pretty steady daily spend unless you adjust it. So as you can see here, it becomes pretty clear that I started adjusting. And then it seems pretty clear here that I went down to 750 around here. Well, actually it would be around like here-ish where it starts to drop. And this is why the source data is fun, because you can just scroll down and you can actually see exactly when I changed it to 750, which was on the first. So now that we know that on the first, I dropped Facebook ads down $5, we can see how that affected your profit. And in this case, I dropped it $5. AMS was pretty steady. It was kind of dropping. And we can see that revenue dropped a little bit on the series. Or I'll just look at this. Things kind of stayed steady even with the drop in Facebook ads. In fact, it kind of stayed steady with the drop in AMS ads, which is, again, kind of telling us that it's harder to do this evaluation based on the series. It is telling us that the lower because this is a 7-day average, the lower ad spend that started about here is really affecting us around here. So what I would guess based on just that little bit of information is Facebook isn't doing as well moving copies than AMS is. And then with AMS is working a lot better than Facebook, I need to focus on increasing AMS or decreasing Facebook. Whether or not decreasing Facebook would have a positive or negative effect is looking at it for the third reason we use this chart, which is looking at what changes you make, the effect it has. But keeping with the troubleshooting, because I think that's what most people really want to know, the reason we do look at series, and I did this backwards because I would have looked at book 1 first. But one of the reasons we look at series is if your book 1 revenue is staying pretty steady, but your series revenue, when I would just look at profit, if your series revenue isn't, if it's dropping, that tells me that your read-through and sell-through isn't happening. And that's when you can go back to your sell-through chart. I'm trying not to get too much in the weeds. One of the reasons why that could be happening is if your targeting is off. And one thing we did discover with this, and the reason why I did drop the Facebook spend, is we were targeting the wrong people with Facebook. Facebook was translated into lots of sales with not as many sales of book 2. So by reducing the Facebook spend, I was trying to up the profit. But of course then, major loss here, which kind of correlates with what I've been seeing across a lot of things. Anyways, I am going way too deep into this because
there's a lot to it and you're losing your voice.
Yeah, I should have drank through that. This would probably take me like 3 hours worth of video to really dig deep into this. So that's one way to use it. How I'm going to demonstrate how we are using it, because this works better as a series looking at, is we made the price change on book 2 on the 29th, and it's not really going to be reflected on here, obviously, on the 29th. If we look at our, I'm just going to do it on the 1st. So if we look at the previous days before the 1st, what our profit was doing as a series, we can see that it was around, I don't even know what that average. It was these numbers. These numbers.
Don't get too technical. Now, before you do this, again, we're talking about the price of book 2, and book 2 was at $4.99. Book 1 is at 99 cents, and then people had to jump from 99 cents to $4.99 to get to the second book. And our thought was that's just too high of a jump for people. And so we dropped that back to $2.99 around the 29th, and so it's reflective around the 1st is what we're seeing. That's why we're seeing that profit number drop right there, because somebody was paying at $4.99 or whatever, now they're paying at $2.99, and we have to kind of make that difference up.
Yes, and because it's book 1 to 2, your sell-through is likely to happen sooner than looking at book 8. But again, it's a reduced price as well, so it's going to take a little bit more time to be reflected, which is another reason why we do a 7-day rolling average rather than looking at it on a day-to-day basis. So what I would do here is I would start to scroll down and look at the effective profit compared to this time in April to what's going on now. And the farther I would go down is how much credit I would pretty much give to the change we made. And as you can see, it dropped and then it recovered, but it isn't too much higher than what it was to start, but it is higher. So based on this, honestly, I could not tell you whether or not that was a smart move, because there are other factors in here, especially with the lowered ad spend. But because there is other things that can explain why this started dropping again, it might still be that changing the price of book 2 was best. So I actually wouldn't make a decision on whether or not that was a good choice until the 8th of June. because that'll give us a full 7-day analysis for 30 days of that change. So I would wait until this was the first and then look at this. You can also look at your source data for the day-to-day, just to kind of see how changes were affected on a day-to-day, keeping in mind that it's not going to be so accurate. And if we see, really? Damn. Sorry, that's just a really different number than everything else around it.
It could have been a promotion that we were doing at the time, though.
I don't think. And that's for series. Oh, you might have done something up there. Anyway, so the day-to-day is really not telling me much either. So going back to here, there's two things I can check. And one of them is actually checking just book 2 and see how that's doing on its own. Now, ad spend is not going to be on here because I'm not running ads on book 2. But I can look at the sales to see if sales have been increasing. Not really. And then I can look at reads. Have reads been increasing? Kinda, maybe, not really. So just looking at this, I'm thinking, there's no way to really know whether or not that had a positive or negative impact. And part of that's going to just be because the book doesn't sell more than 1 copy a day normally. And this is an average. So if you look at the actual sales, they vary so much from 0 to like 4 that it's really hard to judge whether or not the jump from $4.99 to $2.99 had that big of an effect. Now there's one more thing we can compare to, and I'll just do this quick, and that's to book 1, because how much book 2 sells is directly related to book 1 sales. So if book 1 sales have been dropping, so if we see book 1 sales are pretty high, and then now book 1 sales are dropping. This is going to skew how much book 2 is selling in comparison to book 1, because if your sales of book 1 are dropping, then your sales of book 2 dropping doesn't necessarily indicate that it's an issue with the price. I don't know if that even made sense. So with that, again, I would have so sales of book 1 are dropping and sales of book 2 are staying pretty steady. What does that tell me? It tells me that I don't have enough data. Ultimately, during when this 30 days is up, I will go back and look at, we'll go back to
reports.
You're right. He changed it on me. It was something else before. I would look back the past 30 days and see what the sell-through increased. I'll do specific dates just to show you. I'll do the first to yesterday. Now we see it has increased, which means our cumulative, I don't think that increased at all. I think it actually went down. But that's reason why I don't look at less than 30 days, is because this is going to be inaccurate, because even though more people percentage are going on to the next book, they haven't reached book 8 yet.
So question, let me interrupt here. Okay. So at this point, we're kind of doing this as a 30-day test to see, are we seeing a drastic change? And we're clearly not seeing a drastic change right now. And so maybe at the end of 30 days, we start seeing a trend in a different direction. It actually looks like overall the read-through, sell-through is actually doing better. So at that, or I'm sorry, just sell-through. If it turns out not to be the case, would the next strategy be, let's put book 1 back to $2.99 and put book 2 back to $4.99 to see what happens over the next 30 days for that? Or what other strategy at that point, without getting too far into the weeds? I know it can be very heavy, but just the basic idea.
Sure. What I would suggest you do is raise the price of book 1 to $2.99 and keep book 2 at $2.99 for that 30 days.
Okay.
and raise it to $4.99 in 30 days. And I would probably raise it to $4.99 regardless of what happens during that $2.99 period, unless we're seeing raising book 1 to $2.99 has a negative effect.
I got you. Because if we're basically staying status quo, we're going to make more money just by jumping to $4.99. And if we end up staying at still the same number of sales, hey, it's $2, versus 35 cents or whatever, right?
But we do want, if we go from $2.99 to $4.99, we're doing two different variables, and we're actually not really closing the gap.
Gotcha.
And so then we won't know if it's, the different sale price or not.
Right. I mean, we could get to at some point saying, hey, the maximum sales for this thing is to go $2.99, $2.99, $3.99, $4.99. We could. It's one of those things where you just have to tweak and test until you find your sweet spots for each one of the books in that series. It's not just the series.
Right. My personal opinion on it is once you get past book, unless you're seeing, this is another thing when it comes to trying to figure out your pricing is if you look at your sell-through, and I would look longer than what it's at. Come on, mouse. Okay, I guess I'm using my laptop mouse. If you looked farther back than that, if you're seeing a major drop off in sell-through between two of the books in the series that are further than, book 1 to 2, 2 to 3, that could indicate an issue that needs to be solved.
Right. Something in the book itself is screwy or whatever. Maybe there's like a cliffhanger and people get pissed at you or whatever, or you killed a character.
Well, there's another explanation, and that is people don't know that the next book was out. Yeah. And the thing that we do for that is we do a, hey, I'm still alive. There is more books in this series. Come buy me. And you remind people, and you do a campaign based on that, which is, again, way in the weeds. But that's what I would do if there is a drastic drop off in sell through. And drastic to me is more than 10% between two books further in the series over I'll say a 60 or 90-day period.
Okay, gotcha.
One thing to consider again, and I said this a little bit before, it's not just new releases that will screw it up. The last book in your series does tend to, unless the series has been out for a while, it does tend to sell more and have high read through because it takes your own audience a lot longer to go through it than just that 1 to 2 week release period. And so if you really want a conservative number, knock off the last book.
Okay.
So let's go back to the series ads analysis. So that was what I was going to demonstrate with a change. And I would wait that full 30 days to look at your change for something like price. For ads, and this is what I use this on a more regular basis. I use this, something like this, per client every day because, or every day, not as like per client, because I have so many ads to evaluate. And I track all of the changes that I make to any ads. I also track the changes made to the books itself, changing the description, changing the cover. But when I shut off an ad, or if I increase, certain bids, I can then track the change, what that change had as an effect on overall income. This works a lot better on a book 1, rather than looking at the series as a whole for that short period of time, simply because you want to see things faster.
Can I show you a quick trick? So do me a favor before you jump into that. Jump to the top and click back to reports, and then go ahead and choose the series again and jump to it. Okay, let's go back to the analysis. And now when you're going to that book 1, just right click it and then open a new tab. And so this way you can jump back and forth between them very easily, as opposed to doing it the other way. And so that way you don't have to keep on hunting back and forth for them.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's say I'm looking at this. Oh. Okay, so I'm trying to decide whether or not dropping the Facebook ad had a positive or negative effect. And that means I'm looking at it from let's see. I would have this written down, but Okay, so this time period, I was spending almost $15, and then I dropped it to $7.50 around here. So I'll look from the 28th. I'll look from the 1st again, because we want to give it a little time, because these numbers will be skewed by the previous days before you made the change. So looking here, I'm looking at profit of book 1 and seeing what the trend is after lowering the ad spend. As you can see, it's trending pretty severely down. Now, then you have to ask yourself, is it because of this particular ad? And I'll tell you right now, there's only one Facebook ad running, and I reduced the price on that one Facebook ad. So I know that that's being directly affected by Facebook. Or is it because AMS? So we're comparing the two different spends, and you can see this spend is lowering. So based on this, again, this is in the weeds, sorry, what I would need to do to figure out the effect of profit on the actual ad I'm looking at is calculate the difference in change. So I would take that I would take the 1376 and take out the 790, or I would find the percentage of Facebook ad spend this is for everything. That's actually something you can do in ReaderLinks. Yeah. So this feature might be coming soon or something. I probably shouldn't say that. That'll kill me. So what I would do is I want to see how the percentage of Facebook ads are spending less comparatively to the AMS ads, and then I'll see kind of the actual profit change based on just the percentage of the Facebook ads. It's basically what I'm doing is I'm taking out considering the AMS ad spend fluctuations, because AMS is going to probably fluctuate more than anything else. Now, I do have if you look at this, it's pretty steady for daily cents. But when something major happens like this is great for troubleshooting, because now I'm like, oh, shoot, something is wrong. Well, that's why you have no AMS data here. It's screwing up your average.
Yep.
So this is how you know that you have no AMS click data. Most likely not, the books just weren't spending. Yep. So this would be zeros, unless you haven't uploaded it. I'm pretty sure you have.
But this is, oh yeah, we have. But this is a great indicator. So if you are seeing something screwy happening, scroll down to your source data, because you can see this, that when we uploaded our reports for that day, and if I go and look at my reports that day, I'm going to find that Amazon didn't have any actual clicks for those ads. And if you look above that, you can see that there were only 2 clicks the day before, right above that, and there were only 2 clicks the day after. So it's it's showing that there's something that's going on there as far as them not spending our money for whatever reason. I am worried that we are getting way too into the weeds here.
I'll sum this up, because I'm trying to answer that question of whether or not that ad had an effect. So if you look here, this is just interesting. Your click data is now trending up again, and your spend is trending up. That means that whatever happened in this time period has solved itself. And I'll tell you, I have not done anything with his e-index ads for merging in this period of time. So something else is explaining why it wasn't an ad change. So now what I can look for here is, because there's no AMS data, this would be 100% the ad spent. So I'm going to look at what the difference in profit is. And if you notice, profit went up. And I mean, it doesn't look like it went up because it's red, but if you look at the difference between negative 1075 and negative 240.
Loss went down. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is all during the AMS period. And then when AMS starts spending again, profit starts dropping again.
I do want to point out that we can't attribute this 100% to Facebook ads. It could be organic. Somebody just saw the book.
Yes, yeah.
But
that's why looking at the trend tends to be more important. But I wanted to point this out because there was no AMS click data.
Yeah, I agree.
And then when there was AMS click data, profit started to drop. Now, what does that indicate to me personally? AMS is not being as effective as it should be. Now, again, these are one of those things where you make hypotheses, and then you test them, or you look and you dig deeper into the data. And that is the into the weeds part I'm talking about, because there's so many things you can do with this that to solve the actual problems you're finding. The first step always though is to find the problems. And that's what this does at a glance. You can just scroll through, look for your red numbers, look for trends going up and down. And at that point, it is up to you to find, to learn how to solve those problems. And sometimes the best thing you can learn from is when something is going wrong and you're trying to figure out what, and you have to try 20 different things to figure out why is this not working. Because when you do have that breakthrough, that can jump you up a huge amount. And I have to tell you, John, my laptop is at 8%.
Uh-oh. And let me also just say that don't change those 20 things at once.
No.
One thing at a time and gauge how it does. Because if you do change them all at once and all of a sudden you're seeing some success or even worse failure than what you were seeing before, well, that's a problem. And so you're going to want to make sure that you're only doing one thing at a time, because you're not going to be able to pinpoint what it was that made things go great or made things decline. So and so forth. So you have 8% left on your battery. We are at 2 hours. We're at 1 hour and 15 minutes anyway. Are there any questions or anything that come to that? Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure what people are asking is, okay, that was way too much.
Yep.
What am I really, what's the point of looking at this? And I just realized I lost what I was going to say.
Sorry.
Oh, the reason to look at this is so you do not make knee-jerk reactions to things. If you're seeing, I talked about this with John because he's like, our ROI is dropping, wah! Okay, he's not that panicked. But then if you look at it over a period of time, you'll see it's really not. It's a lot more steady. Yes, it's trending down, but if I had made a decision on this day because it's negative 80%, but I discounted everything before it, I'm making, I could be making a very poor choice. And so if you only use this for one thing, use it as a reassurance to not make a jump to a conclusion based on just your day-to-day data. Actually look at this and be like, oh, okay, it's not as bad as I thought. Or look at it and go, oh, shoot, it's even worse than I thought. So if you only use it for that, this is very, very useful.
Okay. So Tamsin Lee asks, can we access historical data on the ads analysis chart? I'm assuming I'd like to look at March, but it stays on April. And the answer is no. It only goes back 30 days from today. That's it. This is the amount of data that's being compressed into here is ginormous. But there's also, so no, we only go back 30 days with this particular one. With the read-through tool, yes, you can go back further than that. Felicia, also there was some reason why you were keeping it to 30 days anyway, besides just the crush on the server.
Oh, because I recommend waiting 30 days between any major change, not an ad change, but any major change to your book before evaluating it. So this gives you the snapshot. You told me to pick a date range that wasn't
right. Do you see value though in going further back than that?
Honestly, yes. And that's why I still have a spreadsheet, but it's one of those things where I also do monthly analysis for all clients and for myself. And so then I only really do need to look at 30 days. If I'm comparing two things specifically, yes, I'll go back on a spreadsheet. But honestly, if you don't have a specific reason for doing it, it can be a time waster. And I love spreadsheets and I love data. And I'm more likely to be like, oh, I'm going to find out, how everything was in March compared to April. And then, I just spent 2 hours doing that. And that 2 hours could have been spent doing something that would make me actual money. So this is almost like it's tempting to go back, but if you're not comparing for a very specific reason, I wouldn't do it just because of the time and effort.
Okay.
And this is really just a limitation of, how much ReaderLinks can actually provide.
Right. Well, we can do it going further back. It's especially after moving it off the front page. I can do that. But there does come a time where it gets a little silly to go back a year, for example.
If you want my suggestion, I would either say 60 or 90 days because you might want to compare month to month.
Right.
But you really, I mean, does it matter what was going on in January compared to here? No.
Okay. So it's something that could happen. Now, the next question that followed up on that is, can you download this to put in? So what you can do is you can actually highlight this data, and then you can just copy it and paste it into Excel. So that's one way that you can do it. Yeah, all right. So those are the only two questions. Let's see, can you explain the rate of change chart briefly, please? What is that measuring? Boy, I wish Joe Solari was here. So that's actually, it's kind of measuring the trend of today versus yesterday versus the next day and so on and so forth to show you how much of a jump of change you're actually having to the negative or the positive. But I would, if you go to the help page, there's actually a link on the help page that shows you all of the, basically the whole breakdown of how that actually works. So under there, under analysis, nope, the second one. Yeah. And then at the top, it says refer to this page. You see that link right above the chart? You click on that, and that's going to give you the complete rate of change and how it's calculated and so on. And I would just stick to the top part, but yeah, that's basically going to describe it. So, so there we have that. Let's see. All right, let's go ahead and if there are any more questions, please post them in the Q&A section of Zoom. And while doing that, let's go ahead and talk about, if you want to stop sharing.
Yeah, I will be right back. I'm muting.
Okay.
You tell them your part. I'm just going to plug my laptop in the kitchen.
Okay.
Or I'll be gone.
Okay, so basically it's kind of you as well. Essentially, Felicia and I have been kind of in pretty heavy discussions about doing a full webinar series that does dig into the weeds of all of this stuff, the advertising, how you actually can determine what's causing these problems, what's causing a book to, or a series not to sell as well, and so on. And as you saw, we kind of got into the weeds here, but obviously when we would do it, right now it's kind of ad hoc. So it's just like one idea comes up, the other idea comes up, and so on. But when you pull it into a webinar series, then the videos that would be done are going to be a lot more clear, concise, and we're going to be meticulous about taking it step by step and going through everything. Plus, helping you understand how to troubleshoot, helping you how to what are the things I should try? What's the next thing I should try in this perspective and anything else in order to get my series, selling in the right direction and moving in the right direction. So it's something that, she's been doing all the work on it. I'm just kind of doing some support and so on with that to get it going. And therefore started a company called Procyon Enterprises for that. And the system is called Level Up Author Marketing, which is coming, but I'm going to share the URL in the chat, and I'll also share it elsewhere. But the point is that if you go there and you sign up to the newsletter, Felicia's going to give you a couple of goodies for that, which you can talk about in a second. And also, you'll be notified, obviously, when the webinar series is ready to go. And also, we'll send you out a newsletter that gives you a coupon code for ReaderLinks. And what that'll allow you to do is get ReaderLinks at $5 off the normal monthly, or if you pay for the year, if you pay by annually, then it's 50% off normal price. So the normal price for ReaderLinks is $19.99 a month. So if you use the coupon code, you'll get it for $14.99. And if you buy it for the year, it's $119 or $9.99 a month, and so on. So go there to sign up for her newsletter. And what are the goodies you're going to give them?
So if you sign up for the newsletter, you're going to get two things. One is kind of a how I run the product, not the product display, the lock screen ads that Amazon has rolled out with, because I know a lot of people aren't having a lot of success with those. So it's just like a little short, this is how I do it, how I've had success, kind of things to look out for. And then the second one, which is a little bit more fun, it's how to run your first data gathering campaign. And it goes through the different ads to run to gather specific information that'll help you run more effective ads later. It also gives you some tips on how to make those ads run really, really well. It's a very much a, this is how to get started. And a lot of you are probably already running ads, but this will give you a little bit more of a focused plan. So that's if you sign up for the newsletter, and those will get out, those will probably be given to you sometime this week. For everyone else, whether or not you sign up for the newsletter, I am offering spots on my beta team for the nonfiction books. There are 2 that'll be coming out this summer, and I need beta readers for them to make sure that it's clear, concise, and you know how to do it. And the first book is due to the editor mid-June, so there will be lots of stuff for you to do. So if you want to join the beta team, I don't know how to have them do it.
Just go ahead and post a link to me in chat, and then I'll share it with them. As you're doing that, you can either share it in chat directly there, or you can share it to me in Messenger, and I'll share it in chat either way. As you're doing that, also note that Felicia and I will both be in Scotland at the 20 Books Conference this year, and that's at the end of July. We'll also both be at NINC, and that's in September, and we will be at the 20 Books Conference in Vegas on early November. So if anybody's going to be to those 3 things, be sure to look us up and say hi.
I'm also speaking at Scotland, Vegas, and Adelaide, Australia at the end of the year.
Rock and roll. So yeah, you're going to Australia. You have fun with that, big spiders. Anyway, cool. So yeah, did you have that? Did you want to share that real quick?
Yes, I got it.
Okay, so there it is. Cool. Oh wow, you set up a ReaderLinks beta thing. Sweet.
Well, no, you walked me through it. Remember?
Yeah, that's rock and roll.
It was
cool.
like a month ago.
I'm looking at it and I'm going, what? That's awesome. Okay, cool. And just so you know, those of you who haven't signed up for ReaderLinks yet, a couple of quick things just to note that what she just shared there is a reader team, which is basically an ARC team. It allows you to manage readers as they come in, be able to tell if they have participated in your reader team, so that way they can report issues to you. So you can have issue reports come in, then you can be able to see all those issue reports. You can, as opposed to like running it on a Google Sheet or something like that, it's all per book. So it's right under the silo of your book. You have all of these issues and stuff like that. I think Orlando Sanchez, one of our users, he got to the point where he does have to do a proofread, but the copy edit is no longer necessary for him, because the reader teams actually report enough issues that the copy editor, who happens to be my wife, by the way, copy editor was like, honestly, the copy edit is really not necessary anymore. I'm getting all this stuff reported anyway, but you still need a proofread. So that's helped. Anyway, so the reader team stuff is great, and Orlando asked a question. My reader team is awesome. That's not really a question.
One thing you should let them know is that in order to apply, you have to have a reader account, not applying with your author account.
That's right. It is a reader account. It's not an author account. It's not the same thing. 2 totally different things. And we have ideas for the reader team stuff in the future to make it easier, make it faster, better, all that kind of stuff. But everything is obviously on a priority basis. So you know, we have to move the needle based upon what people are clamoring for the most. So that's what we're doing. All right, we are at an hour and a half. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
No.
Okay. Well, then, thanks to everybody for joining us today. I will get the recording done and make that available, and I'll put it up on the ReaderLinks group. And I'm sure we'll be posting it on other groups as well. And thank you, Felicia, for joining us and for helping me build these tools.
Yep, of course. Thank you.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot.